Hey there, beautiful humans. Welcome back to The Dang Good Show. I'm your host, CDang, but you can call me CDang. Today, we're diving into something that's been on my mind lately, the fascinating difference between perception and perspective, and how understanding this distinction can literally transform your life. Now, at first glance, these two words might seem almost identical. I mean, they both start with per and have something to do with how we see things, right? But here's the thing. They're fundamentally different concepts that shape our reality in profound ways. Perception is about how we interpret sensory information, what we see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. It's how our brain processes the raw data of the world. Perspective, on the other hand, is about the lens through which we view situations. It's shaped by our values, experiences, beliefs, and so much more. Understanding the difference isn't just some linguistic nitpicking. It's actually a powerful tool of self-awareness and building deeper connections with others. And that's exactly what we're exploring today. So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's unpack how these two forces shape our lives, our relationships, and even our world. Trust me, by the end of this episode, you'll see things differently. And yes, that pun was absolutely intended. Let's start by really understanding what these terms mean. Perception is essentially how our brain interprets the information our senses gather. It's the process of recognizing and interpreting sensory information to understand our environment. Think about it this way. When you look at a cup of coffee, your eyes send signals to your brain about its color, size, and shape. Your nose picks up its aroma. That's perception, the raw intake and processing of sensory data. Now, perspective, this is where things get really interesting. Perspective is a unique viewpoint we have based on our personal experiences, cultural backgrounds, upbringing, values, and beliefs. It's like the special filter we all carry around that colors everything we see. So with that same cup of coffee, one person might see a delightful morning ritual that brings comfort and joy. Another might see an unhealthy addiction they're trying to break. And someone else might see a symbol of a worker exploitation in the coffee industry. Same cup, completely different perspectives. Here's where I find this absolutely fascinating. Perception is largely a biological process that's similar for most people with functioning senses. Perspective, however, is uniquely personal. That's why 10 people can witness the exact same event and walk away with 10 different stories. I remember reading a study from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology that showed how people with different cultural backgrounds literally perceive visual information differently. Western participants tended to focus on central objects and images, while East Asian participants paid more attention to the background and context. That's perception being influenced by cultural perspective. And here's another mind-blowing thought. Our perspectives can actually shape our perceptions, right? Research in cognitive psychology has demonstrated that what we expect to see can influence what we actually perceive. It's like our brains are constantly making predictions based on our perspectives, and these predictions can actually filter what we perceive. So, while we might think we're seeing the world as it is, we're actually seeing the world as we are, And that, my friends, is both a challenge and an incredible opportunity. Now, let's talk about a classic example that perfectly illustrates the power of perspective: the optimist and the pessimist. I want to share a story about two colleagues I once had. Let's call them Sam and Alex. Sam and Alex worked on the same team, in the same office, with the same boss. But if you asked them about their workplace, you'd think they were describing entirely different companies. Sam would tell you about the supportive environment, the growth opportunities, the friendly colleagues, and how every challenge was a chance to learn something new. Alex, on the other hand, would describe the intense pressure, the unrealistic deadlines, the office politics, and how every challenge was just another example of poor management. Same workplace, completely different experiences. I remember one specific project that really highlighted this difference. The team was assigned a new client with a tight deadline and a somewhat vague brief. When the assignment was announced in our team meeting, I watched both their reactions. Sam immediately started brainstorming ideas, seeing the ambiguity as creative freedom. "This is great," Sam said. "We can really think outside the box and propose something innovative." The tight deadline was viewed as exciting and focusing. Now, Alex, however, sighed heavily and immediately focused on the obstacles. "This is impossible," Alex muttered. "The brief is too vague, the deadline is unrealistic, and the client probably won't even know what they want until they see it." Here's the fascinating part. Both Sam and Alex were correct in their own way. The brief was indeed vague, and the deadline was tight. Those were the facts, the things that could be objectively perceived. But their perspectives on what those facts meant were dramatically different, and those perspectives shaped their entire experience of the project. Sam ended up enjoying the process, staying energized throughout, and delivering creative work. Alex struggled through every step, felt constantly stressed, and produced safe, uninspired work just to meet the deadline. Now, when the client loved Sam's work and was lukewarm about Alex's, it only reinforced their perspectives. So Sam saw it as validation that optimism and creativity pay off. Alex saw it as evidence of the client's favoritism and poor judgment. This pattern repeated itself over and over. Same company, same team, same assignments, yet completely different experiences because of their perspectives. I found myself wondering, were Sam and Alex born this way? Did they choose their perspectives? Or were their perspectives shaped by their past experiences? Perhaps Sam had previously been rewarded for taking creative risks, while Alex had been burned before. What I do know is that their perspectives became self-fulfilling prophecies. Sam found opportunities everywhere because Sam was looking for them. Alex found problems everywhere because Alex was looking for them. The power of perspective is that it doesn't just interpret your reality, it helps create it. Let's shift gears and look at another fascinating example of how perspective shapes our experience. Siblings who grow up in the same household yet have completely different experiences of their childhood. I've always been fascinated by this phenomenon. Growing up with my own siblings, there were moments when I'd think, were we even living in the same house? The way we remembered events, the roles we assigned to our parents, and how we viewed our childhood could be dramatically different. Research in family psychology confirms this isn't uncommon. Siblings can have vastly different perceptions of their upbringing, even though they shared the same parents, the same home, and many of the same experiences. Let me share a personal example. In my family, as the oldest child, one of the oldest child, I had a very different experience than my younger sibling. I remember strict rules, high expectations, and being the guinea pig for my parents' first attempt at childcare. I was expected to be responsible, set a good example, and help with household chores from a young age. My younger siblings, on the other hand, recalls our parents as much more relaxed and permissive. The rules seemed less strict by the time they came along, and there was less pressure to be perfect. From my perspective, it sometimes felt like they got away with things I could never have. What's fascinating is that neither of us is wrong. We both grew up in the same house with the same parents, but we experienced different versions of them. Why? Because parents often change their approach with each child. They're often more experienced and confident with the younger children, and the family dynamics shift with each new addition. Birth order plays a huge role here. Firstborns often report feelings of pressure and responsibility, while youngest children frequently describe feeling babied or not taken as seriously. Middle children commonly talked about feeling overlooked or having to find their own unique identity. But it goes beyond just birth order. Each child has their own unique temperament, interest, and relationship with each parent. Some children naturally align more with one parent's communication style or interests, creating a different dynamic. I spoke to friends who have shared even more dramatic examples. One friend and her sister disagreed completely about whether their childhood was happy. My friend remembered family game nights, vacations, and supportive parents. Her sister recalls the arguments between their parents, the financial stress, and feeling unsupported in her interest. Again, neither is wrong. They each focused on and internalized different aspects of their shared environment. Their perspectives were shaped by their unique personalities, how they process events emotionally, and countless other factors. Understanding this phenomenon has been incredibly healing for many families. It helps us realize that our siblings aren't rewriting history when they remember things differently. They're sharing their genuine experience, filtered through their unique perspective. Now, it also explains why family members can have such different relationships with the same person. Your strict father might be someone else's supportive grandfather. Your distant mother might be someone else's respectful of boundaries friend. Now, this awareness can help us approach family dynamics with more empathy and less judgment. When we understand that everyone's perspective is shaped by their unique position in the family, we can be more open to hearing each other's truths without trying to prove one version right and another wrong. Enjoying what you're hearing? Fantastic! To make sure you're always in the loop with the latest episode, just hit that subscribe button. Your support makes all the difference. And hey, this podcast thrives because of awesome listeners like you. So a big shout out for that. And of course, I'm on Instagram. Find and follow me at Christine_Dang. Lastly, looking for more information on what we discussed today? Just cruise on over to thedangoodshow.com, click on the episode you're curious about, and Voila! Access to the show notes. Now, without further ado, let's jump back into the show. So, why am I so passionate about understanding the difference between perception and perspective? Because I truly believe it's a superpower that can transform your life and relationships. When you understand that everyone is viewing the world through their own unique lenses, shaped by their experiences, culture, personality, and countless other factors, something magical happens. You develop a kind of empathetic flexibility that allows you to connect with people on a deeper level. First, understanding builds confidence. When you recognize that your perspective is just one of the many valid ways to view a situation, you become more secure in your viewpoint while also being open to others. You don't need to defensively protect your perspective as the truth. It's your truth, and that's enough. Imagine not having to prove you're right all the time. Imagine the freedom of being able to say, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I see it differently, but I understand where you're coming from. That confidence, the kind that doesn't need to dominate or convert others, is incredibly attractive and powerful. Second, this understanding creates a deep sense of calmness. Think about how many arguments and conflicts are essentially perspective clashes. When you realize that most disagreements aren't about facts, but about the meaning we assign to those facts, you can approach conflicts very differently. Instead of getting frustrated that someone doesn't see the obvious truth, you can get curious about how they're seeing the situation. This curiosity replaces judgment and diffuses tension. I've watched heated arguments completely transform when someone simply asks, I'm interested in understanding how you see this. Can you help me see it from your perspective? Third, and perhaps the most importantly, this understanding builds empathy. That ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and feel what they're feeling. Empathy isn't about agreeing with someone. It's about understanding them. When you recognize that someone's perspective is shaped by their unique life experience, you can connect with them even when you disagree. You can see the humanity in viewpoints that differ from yours. Rather than dismissing people as wrong or crazy, you can be curious about the experiences that led them to the perspective. Look at our world today. We have incredible technology, instantaneous global communication, and access to more information than any humans in history. Yet, we're seeing increasing polarization, division, and an inability to find common ground. I think this is partly because we've lost the art of perspective taking. Social media algorithms show us more of what we already believe. News sources cater to specific worldviews. We're increasingly sorted into bubbles where our perspectives are constantly reinforced and rarely challenged. The result? We not only disagree with people who hold different perspectives, we often can't even comprehend how they could possibly think that way. We assume they must be misinformed, unintelligent, or malicious, rather than simply viewing the world through a different lens. But what if we approached these differences with curiosity instead of judgment? What if, before dismissing a perspective that seems foreign to us, we ask, what would have to be true about someone's life experience for this perspective to make sense to them? This doesn't mean abandoning your own values or accepting harmful viewpoints. Rather, it means approaching differences with a desire to understand before critiquing. It means recognizing that most people are doing the best they can with the perspective they've developed through their own unique life's journey. Let's take this to an even bigger level. I believe understanding the nature of perception and perspective is key to building a more compassionate world. Think about it. How many of the major conflicts in our world stem from the inability to recognize the validity of different perspectives, whether it's political divisions, cultural clashes, or even warfare? At the root is often a failure to see beyond our own viewpoint. We're living in a time of unprecedented technological advancement. We can communicate instantly with people across the globe, access virtually all of human knowledge with a few keystrokes, and solve complex problems that would have been unimaginable just decades ago. Yet, despite all this progress, our communities often seem more divided than ever. We've built amazing tools to connect, but we're struggling to actually understand each other. I think perspective awareness is the missing piece. When we truly grasp that everyone is viewing the world through their unique lenses, shaped by their culture, upbringing, experiences, and countless other factors, we approach differences differently. Instead of seeing someone with a different perspective as wrong or as an opponent, we can be curious about how they've come to see the world as they do. This doesn't mean we have to agree with every perspective. Some perspectives are indeed harmful and based on misinformation. But even then, understanding how someone arrived at that perspective is even more effective than simply dismissing them. I've seen this principle work in my own life countless times, where I approach disagreements with curiosity rather than judgment. Conversation that might have become heated arguments instead become opportunities for mutual growth. When I ask questions like, "Help me understand how you see the situation," or "What experiences shaped your views on this?" something magical happens. The defenses come down, the need to be right diminishes, and real communication begins. Now, imagine a world where this approach was more common. Imagine political leaders who sought to understand opposing viewpoints before criticizing them. Imagine media that presented issues from multiple perspectives, helping us see the complexity rather than reinforcing our existing views. Imagine social media platforms designed to expand your understanding rather than narrow it. This isn't just some utopian fantasy. There are practical steps each of us can take to create a more perspective-aware world. Number 1, practice perspective taking in your daily life. When you disagree with someone, try to genuinely see the issues from their viewpoint before responding. Number 2, diversify your information sources. Intentionally seek out perspectives that differ from your own, especially on important issues. Number 3, ask more questions and make fewer assumptions. When someone expresses a viewpoint that seems wrong to you, get curious about how they arrived at that conclusion. And number 4, share your perspective as your perspective, not as universal truth. Using phrases like "the way I see it" or "from my perspective" creates space for different viewpoints. And lastly, number 5, look for partial truth in perspectives you disagree with. Even viewpoints that seem mostly wrong often contain elements of truth or valid concerns. And here's maybe the most important point. This all starts with self-awareness and self-love. When we're secure in ourselves and our own perspective, we don't feel threatened by different viewpoints. When we practice compassion towards ourselves, including forgiving our own mistakes and limitations, we can more easily extend that compassion to others. That's why I believe so strongly in the practices that I've shared in previous episodes: mindfulness, self-compassion, emotional intelligence, and authentic self-expression. These aren't just personal development tools. They're the foundation for creating a more understanding, compassionate world. Now, let's get practical. How can you develop this perspective awareness in your own life? I've got some exercises that have helped me tremendously. I think they might help you too. First, try the 3 perspectives exercise. The next time you find yourself in a disagreement or conflict, take a moment to consider. 1. Your perspective. How do you see the situation? What values, experiences, and beliefs are shaping your view? Number 2, their perspective. How might the other person see the situation? What might be important to them that you're missing? And lastly, the 3rd, a neutral third perspective. If someone with no stake in the outcome were observing, what might they notice that both of you are missing? Just taking a moment to consider these 3 angles can completely transform how you approach the situation. Another powerful practice is keeping a perspective journal. Each day, identify one situation where someone saw things differently than you did. Rather than focusing on who was right, try to articulate both perspectives as clearly and fairly as possible. This builds your perspective-taking muscles over time. You can also try the perspective swap with someone you trust. Choose a topic you disagree on, and each of you has to make the best case for the other person's view. This isn't about mockery or caricature. It's about genuinely trying to understand another viewpoint well enough to articulate it. Here's one that's been particularly powerful for me: the route to perspective exploration. When you encounter a perspective that seems completely foreign or wrong to you, ask yourself, what life experiences might lead someone to this view? Try to imagine the path that could lead a reasonable, well-intentioned person to this conclusion. This doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but it helps develop empathy. And finally, practice perspective gratitude. Each day, identify one way that someone else's different perspective has enriched your life or helped you see something you might have missed. This helps you see diversity of thought as a gift rather than a threat. These practices might feel awkward at first, especially if you're used to defending your perspective as the right one, but over time, they become second nature, and you'll find yourself naturally considering multiple perspectives before forming judgments. What I love most about developing this skill is that it doesn't require you to abandon your own values or beliefs. In fact, I found that the more I understand others' perspectives, the clearer I become about what I truly value and believe. There's a paradox here. Being open to other viewpoints actually helps you develop a stronger, more nuanced perspective of your own. And isn't that what we all want? To see the world clearly, to understand others deeply, and to be understood in return? This perspective awareness is a path towards that kind of rich, authentic connection with ourselves and others. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with one final thought about perception and perspective. The beauty of understanding these concepts isn't just that they help us navigate our relationships and the world more effectively, though they certainly do that. The real beauty is that they invite us into a richer, more textured experience of life itself. When we recognize that our perception and perspective are just one way of experiencing reality, we open ourselves to wonder and curiosity. We become explorers rather than judges, learners rather than knowers, and in the space of openness, we discover so much more about ourselves and the incredible world we inhabit. I think about that quote often attributed to Anais Nin. We don't see things as they are. We see them as we are. There's profound wisdom in those words. Our perspective isn't just a lens through which we view the world. It's a mirror that reflects our inner landscape, our values, our fears, our hopes, and our history. By becoming more aware of our perspective and more open to others, we're not just improving our relationships. We're embarking on one of the most profound journeys possible. The journey to understand ourselves. And when we understand ourselves more deeply, we can show up more authentically in the world. We can love ourselves more completely. And from that place of self-awareness and self-love, we naturally extend more compassion, understanding, and kindness to others. That's the world I want to live in. One where we're all a little more aware of our perspectives, a little more curious about others, and a little more compassionate as a result. And I truly believe that each of us, by developing this awareness in our own lives, is helping to create that world. So as you go through your week, I invite you to notice your perspective at work. Notice how it shapes what you perceive, how you react, and how you relate to others. Get curious about it. And when you encounter perspectives different from your own, see it as you can approach them with the same curiosity rather than immediate judgment. I love to hear how this goes for you. Drop me a message on Instagram at Christine_Dang or visit c-dang.com to share your experiences. And if you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone who might benefit. Thank you so much for joining me on The Dang Good Show. And for more insights on emotional intelligence and building authentic connections, check out episode 12, where we dive deep into self-awareness and self-love. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep cultivating that perspective awareness. Much love, CDang signing out. Thank you for joining us on The Dang Good Show. Remember to swing by our website, thedangoodshow.com, where you can easily subscribe on platforms like Apple, Google, and Spotify to keep up with our latest episodes. Loved what you heard today? A thumbs up and a positive review on your favorite listening platform would be incredibly appreciated. And if our show struck a chord with you, sharing it with just one friend can help our community grow and thrive. Thanks once more for lending your ears to me on The Dang Good Show. Until we meet again, take care and goodbye.